With streaming services taking over and cinemas being a location of distant dreams, 2020 was an admittedly complex year for the film medium. Regardless, the film buffs watched as many movies as they could from home before selecting their absolute favorites. These are, in our opinion, the best films of 2020.
Generally, we consider movies to be a form of escapism. We use them to enter new and exciting worlds, to explore realities that are often otherwise impossible to experience. However, occasionally the difference between the real life and the cinema is nearly non-existent, and the result is a remarkable and often uncomfortable movie experience. This is how I felt watching Shithouse, Cooper Raif's debut coming-of-age comedy. This film follows a struggling college student and his RA as they spend a night looking for a place to bury a pet turtle. The most striking aspect of this film is Raif's dialogue, which perfectly captures the awkward idiosyncrasies of real conversation. Shithouse offers a personal, relatable, and extremely enjoyable view into college life, and I highly recommend checking it out.
Thoroughbreds director Corey Finley proved his status as an emerging master of the sinister with 2020 crime drama Bad Education. The film follows the exposé of the largest school embezzlement scheme in U.S. history. Hugh Jackman gives a career best performance as Frank Tassone, superintendent of Roslyn, Long Island School District. Tassone's perfectly strung, charismatic facade begins to unravel when suspicious expenses are discovered in the transactions. The scandal itself is thrilling, but what sets Bad Education apart from its white-collar crime peers is the subtle yet powerful emphasis on the value of truth in the people who seek it. High school student and aspiring journalist Rachel Kellogg stops at nothing to expose the adults who are swindling herself and her peers out of the education they deserve. The once mighty fall at the hand of the voracious written word. In a confusing year, Bad Education supplied me with a bit of clarity.
As a passionate musician and a member of my own rock band, no movie in 2020 scared me more than Sound of Metal. This movie could serve as a character study of protagonist Ruben Stone, played phenomenally by Riz Ahmed, but it also serves as an analysis of what it means to be deaf, or even what it means to lose a monumental part of life. We see Ruben go through the same 5 stages of grief when he loses hearing as one does when losing a loved one, but just when we become accustomed to the deaf community and think Ruben is coming around as well, he breaks the hearts of not only the audience members, but his ASL counselor as well when he decides to get implants replicating his own hearing. The final scene of Ruben taking off his hearing aids and returning to a world of silence is a poignantly perfect ending to the emotional roller coaster this movie takes us through. Sound of Metal is a heartbreaking and frightening analysis of what it means to lose everything in human empathy, and also the best movie of 2020.
Among the obviously limited catalog of 2020 releases, many of which I admit to having not seen, the only movie to stand out as not only a masterpiece, not only a wildly invigorating piece of entertainment, but as a significant step forward in film form, is Spike Lee's latest narrative effort, *Da 5 Bloods*. Making use of the chaotic and politically charged documentary elements that can be seen in his other work, most recently at the end of *BlacKkKlansman, Lee strings together a series of incidents and ideas that he uses as a blunt object with which to assault the viewer. Sporting wonderful and unashamedly digital cinematography, along with an ensemble cast in which Delroy Lindo gives an unmatched, standout performance, *Da 5 Bloods* is an absurd and rare movie that represents, for better or worse, though I say for better, the oncoming death of filmic subtlety.
I really struggled in choosing my favorite film of 2020. Typically, I look for an emotional connection. Minari and Sound of Metal and Nomadland were all serious contenders for the most transforming experience of the year. However, no film has lingered in my mind quite like Eliza Hittman's Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. With this movie, I felt the female experience in a more visceral way than I'd ever anticipated. With 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days in the back of my mind, I was overwhelmed with the deepest compassion better known as solidarity. Hand in hand, these 2 girls make an exhausting covert journey to the big city, while the men in their life serve as this unbelievably frustrating paradox of both holding responsibility for the mess as well as being the root of their dependence, and the only solution to their misfortune. Each cry for help comes with a cost. There's so much going on beneath the surface that the audience can't read into until the stoic Autumn finally breaks at the clinic questioning. We learn very little of the specifics, and yet her vulnerability in that moment alone gives us more than enough reason to empathize with her, a young girl who was forced to make an enormous decision entirely on her own. This movie put me in touch with my sense of place in the world right now, and the realization that there is a half of the world who will never fully understand the concept of womanhood as it continues to apply. But it's very much a living, breathing thing that has persisted across generations, and I feel its core in this movie.
Charlie Kaufman said that we needed a place for movies that weren't meant to make $100 million, and he has finally found that place in Netflix. I'm Thinking of Ending Things may not be accessible, as Charlie Kaufman experiments with film structure and he leaves a lot of questions very much open-ended by the film's conclusion. However, it's through the clever subtleties of the film's reveals and in Charlie Kaufman's writing and the film's brilliantly off-kilter editing style that I love it. Charlie Kaufman works within his budget constraints to ambitious proportions and pulls off a film with layered viewings. Watching I'm Thinking of Ending Things for the first time could not feel more different than the second watch, which couldn't feel more different than the third. Yet I cherished each and every viewing. As I constantly got less confused, I got constantly more interested, as well as more and more depressed as I further understood the characters. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is one of Kaufman's best works to date, with a richness in its thematic exploration, and it's my choice for the best film of 2020.